Europa Universalis 5 opens with the most reckless promise a strategy game can make. We modeled the entire world, every person for 5 centuries, and we expect you to keep the plate spinning without shattering the china. That's not marketing fluff, that's the design. Paradox Tinto has swapped out the old abstractions for population-driven everything. A map that's been sliced into far finer pieces, and a system stack so dense you can practically smell the parchment. The question isn't, is it deep? It's, does it play nice, and should you jump in now? Let's translate the brochure into human. EU5 runs 1337 to 1837, PC only at launch $60. Compared to EU4, you're dealing with roughly 7 times the number of locations, and each location isn't a monolith anymore. Culture, religion, and class live at the person level. Markets don't just push arrows along fixed nodes. Your workshops actually make weapons and cloth that feed local demand, spill into neighboring markets, and jack prices when war breaks out 2 regions over. Terrain isn't a single tag. Topography, climate, and vegetation conspire to make some valleys gold mines and some mountains meat grinders. 2 core ideas glue it together: control and proximity. Painting the map your color doesn't mean you actually govern it, and projecting authority costs time, money, and infrastructure in a way that finally feels intuitive. The tutorial is better than you'd expect for a game this dense, and automation does real work. You can hand trade or other subsystems to the AI while you learn to walk, then grab the wheel when you're ready. Nested tooltips are a lifesaver until you hit an edge case, and there are mission-style guides that teach you by doing. None of that erases the learning curve, it just gives you footholds. If you've got thousands of hours in EU4, you'll still spend your first hour just staring before you unpause. And your next dozen realizing that being the nation in EU5 means wrestling estates, literacy, and migration as much as pushing armies. Speaking of armies, war is no longer a power score slap fight. Terrain, weather, and logistics matter at a painful, satisfying level. Taking a flooded river crossing into a fortified mountain pass is not just a little red modifier, it's a bad day you chose. Professional troops, training, and supply lines trump raw numbers. The result is a battlefield where patience, maneuver, and readiness are worth more than a doom stack you can't feed. It's the wargame EU4 flirted with and never fully married. So why the consternation? Because simulating the world, this finally makes balance a hydra. Multiple outlets report that the AI currently feels too content to settle into comfort, producing maps that grow oddly static after the early scramble. Historical formations fail to materialize with any regularity. Colonization can still go cartoonish. South America buttoned up by 1700 and the Congo Basin-speaking Italian happens more than it should. In Europe, you might see Bordergore Jackson Pollock would envy, then watch it freeze in place for centuries. None of that kills the systems. It just means the sandbox sometimes forgets to play back. Then there's tuning. Review builds leading up to launch shipped with patches that clearly improved things, but not enough to declare victory. Expect some weird outcomes, a few loops that need retuning, and an AI that plays geopolitics like a careful neighbor rather than a hungry rival. If you're the kind of player who wants the world to at least cosplay plausible, you'll frown when Bohemia builds Canada while somehow never finding India. If you're here for pure alternate history chaos, you'll shrug and keep cooking. Performance is the other dice roll. Across rigs, late-game stutter at month ticks and intermittent crashes happened. For some, it was a handful across 60-plus hours. For others, strings of crashes in a single decade. The upside, optimization is shockingly decent for the load, and UI responsiveness remains crisp even when the sim chugs. The downside, it's still a launch window paradox game. You know the song, support will be long-term, but day one smoothness is not guaranteed. Here's the part where most reviews agree because it's hard not to. Nation management here is intoxicating. Building a market town and threading it into a road network. Fostering a specialized economy because your people and terrain suggest one path over another, bending estates without breaking the state. All of that is engrossing. The population model turns development from a button into a relationship. The map is a joy to zoom around even if you'll nitpick the art. The orchestral score and tactile UI are catnip for immersion. If you measure a grand strategy game by how completely it colonizes your brain, EU5 is a black hole. But depth has a cost, and EU5 makes you pay it with time and attention. The late medieval century functions like a long runway. Veterans will love it for mega campaigns, others will wish the meat began sooner. An observer run at max speed still eats hours. A full campaign can run 60 to 70 at the fastest setting, and that's if you resist the urge to pause and agonize. There's a reason seasoned players call 1,000 hours the tutorial. EU5 leans into that reputation. So buy now or wait. Here's the veteran game take. If you are a grand strategy sicko who lives for systems and doesn't mind wrestling a brilliant unfinished machine, EU5 is already a wonder. The foundation is so strong that even with AI drift and a few crashy corners, the play is worth the turbulence. If you are AI sensitive, plausibility pilled, or allergic to reloading after a hiccup, give it a couple of big patches. The design clearly prioritizes long-term potential over day one varnish. And that's the smart call for a game meant to live for years. But it makes early adoption a personality test. What I love most is the shift in authorship. EU5 stops pretending you're a god emperor with magic admin mana and makes you the emergent consequence of people, place, and time. That's why the wins feel earned and why the misfires sting less. Even when the simulation whiffs a detail, the intent modeled the messy, not the tidy, shines through. It's a statement piece for the genre. It just needs time to tune its orchestra. If this kind of no BS deep dive is your jam, hitch a ride with Veteran Game and hit subscribe. If you're nodding or fuming, toss a like, so this take survives the algorithm, and we can keep charting the weird frontiers where ambition and play meet. Last spark to kick the comments off. Should Paradox crank the AI's aggression and hard script more historical guardrails for plausibility? Or let the pop sim sandbox go feral, even if it paints the ugliest map you've ever loved?